Kicking off our list at number 10. Floating hand. Okay, this one is so scary. Kill those lights. Let's dive into it, right? This photo is from over 100 years ago. Now this time, the photographer may or may not have caught a floating spirit hand in their photo. Yeah, I'll show you the photo. Let me know if you see it at first, right? Take a glance. What's wrong with this photo? Anything sticking out? Any floating hands just appearing in the photo? This photo is a group of women who worked in a linen factory. The lady on the far right appears to have an extra hand resting on her shoulder. Yeah, her right, our left. This may be a hidden person, maybe somebody with long arms was out of frame. I'm a lanky guy myself. I can put my arms around like 9 of my friends in a photo, I get it. But it's the positioning of the hand that gives me the chills, right? It looks curled almost, which gives it a demonic, insidious, the last key vibes. You know what I'm saying? Number 9. Colossal squid. Not to be confused with the giant squid, those are similar, but dare I say, smaller. As its name hint towards, the colossal squid is huge. It's one of the biggest things I've ever seen in my entire life. They live in the darkest, coldest depths surrounding the waters of Antarctica. These squid are on average 46 feet in length, with the females being the largest of the species. They have large tentacles with suckers equipped with razor hooks, so whatever it grabs, it's certainly not letting go anytime soon. Its diet consists of large fish, and when I say large, I'm referring to a 7-foot long Patagonian toothfish. You know, not like a little goldfish. No, these are colossal. They need a colossal meal. They try and fight whales sometimes. Know what I mean? They have no regard for the size of others, and they're more often than not marked up, suggesting that they've been in a few deep sea tussles, right? Octopus wants to fight. It's my favorite IPA. That's the inspiration right there. On top of being magnificent, they're quite mysterious. Only 2 specimens have ever been collected, with the second being as recent as 2014. Do you believe this is the closest living thing to the Kraken? I don't know, I'm horrified of deep sea creatures, so this list is haunting in my way, okay?
In our number 7 spot today, we have the plague. This photo comes from the 19th century, from the 3rd plague pandemic. This was the first time that the plague had spread to all 5 continents. While we now know something about what that might have been like, what we haven't had to endure are the doctors that dressed like this. This is a photo of the outfits and masks that plague doctors wore when they would come to your house to treat or diagnose you. The long beak-like noses of the masks are very creepy, but they were used to hold herbs and other nicely scented things because they believed that it would help ward off the bad air, which at the time is what they thought was causing the sickness. A pandemic certainly is bad enough. Thankfully, our doctors and nurses are just sticking to scrubs. In our number 5 spot today, we have Mount Pinatubo. This is a photo that is showing Mount Pinatubo, which is located in the Philippines, on June 15th, 1991. That is the day that this volcano erupted into what would be the 2nd largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century. Certainly impressive, also extremely terrifying. This photo shows the pyroclastic flow full of hot gas and rock being flung into the air. Eruptive activity in the volcano first started on April 2nd of that year, which prompted researchers to set up seismographs in the area. By June, the volcano was having a group of progressively shallower eruptions before, on June 12th, the volcano had its first spectacular eruption, which sent an ash column 19 kilometers up into the atmosphere. After more highly gas-charged magma reached the surface on June 15th, the volcano once again exploded, this time sending the cloud of ash 40 kilometers up into the atmosphere. Volcanic ash and pumice blanketed the surrounding area, and pyroclastic flows filled what were once deep valleys with fresh volcanic deposits. It was truly magnificent and extremely powerful, and this photo shows just that. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Pioneer's Defense. This photo is known as the Pioneer's Defense, and man does it ever look creepy. This photo comes from 1937 and it was taken by a Russian photographer named Viktor Bulla. This photo takes place in the Leningrad area, which is now known as St. Petersburg, which is the 2nd largest city in Russia. The people in this photo were part of a group that was the 1930s Russian equivalent of our Boy Scouts, and it was called the Young Pioneers. The masks on their faces leave a very eerie feeling, and for a fair reason. These people were doing a military preparation drill, which is the reason for the gas mask. This photo was taken during a time where the country was under the dictatorship of Joseph Stalin, and the residents were constantly unsure of what was going to happen. The country was already seeing death and people were already frightened, just a few years before the start of World War II.
Number 3. Underneath Thwaites Glacier. We've seen some fascinating stuff here on Bumblebee, specifically underwater creatures and haunting stuff from our past. We love exploring the depths, and this next one I couldn't believe. It's actually terrifying to look at. This is footage from the bottom of an Antarctic glacier. This glacier is the size of Florida. If it collapses, our sea levels could rise 10 feet, so it's a pretty big deal. So scientists were like, yeah, let's drill a hole through the middle of it and see what happens. Yeah, in 2019, researchers drilled 2,300 feet right through the middle of the Thwaites Glacier, and they dropped a robot with the camera down and they saw this. This is the first time we've seen the grounding zone of Thwaites Glacier. Lead scientist Brittany Schmidt says this project is a dream come true. And for me, it's a nightmare that I now have to look at. I don't want to watch this video ever again, but you should, it's pretty cool. Number 2. Tomb KV55. Classic, going back to Egypt for our Bumblebee fans. Located in the Valley of Kings in Egypt, Tomb 55, otherwise KV55, was discovered by Edward Arton back in 1907. And the reason we call this tomb by a number rather than a name is because, well, we don't know who or what exactly was inside. Even the walls inside of it, they aren't like other tombs, covered in ancient hieroglyphs or, art or anything nice. No, this time there's nothing here. The only hint that remains is one hieroglyph. And it's scary. It translates to, "The evil one shall not live again." Even these massive stones were built in order to prevent anything from getting out of the tomb. Yeah, out of the tomb. Usually with ancient tombs in history, it's the opposite. Things are, prevented to get grave robbers to come in. This time they're like, no, we don't want anything getting out. That's kind of haunting. Many believe that it's Akhenaton because he got on the wrong foot with, the high priests over 17 years of ruling. He was convincing everybody that their art and religion was wrong, and the only god in existence was his sun god. So his own son, King Tut, succeeded him and luckily restored the previous religion back to normal. But yeah, maybe that's why this tomb is empty. Maybe they're like, you know what? We don't want history to remember you. You tried to out religion, so we're good. Number 1, house guest. I saved the best for last, and by that I mean this is the scariest thing I've ever seen. This video, yep, little surprise for you, there we go. This comes from a middle-aged man in Oxford, North Carolina. It was his day off of work and he was looking forward to just kicking back, relaxing, and instead he had to deal with this. Instead, the lights in his home started to flicker, and immediately after, the smoke detector started to go off. The lights were flickering all over the house, not just one room. The fridge light, the bathroom light, you name it. The water even started to run by itself. So something started to go wrong, apparently. And he filmed the happenings, but when he looked back in the footage, after fleeing his home on his only day off, he caught this peeking from the other room when looking back. Pretty terrifying, right? Yeah. Number 10, demonic boy photo. All right, scary as hell right off the hop. It doesn't matter where or when, but odds are you've seen this photo at some point in your life. It's pretty haunting. It's kind of hard to forget. Check it out. When you see a photo, sometimes you just get bad vibes, like it registers in your brain as something real and scary. You want to find something about this photo that looks fake, but it's hard. This photo here was taken inside the Amityville house back in 1976, the real house. It appears to be a young boy with glowing white eyes. Kind of hard to forget. It was taken with automatic cameras equipped with infrared, so nobody actually took this themselves, it was just set up. It makes it even creepier that the boy looks like he's peeking around the corner. Makes my heart race just looking at that photo right there. A photographer named Gene Campbell operated this and got this photo. See, Gene was working with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren at this time, the famous duo, now rocking the big screen Conjuring universe. They were on this case in real life. This photo was then revealed 3 years later on the Merv Griffin Show. Imagine tuning in, watching TV on the Merv Griffin Show, and then all of a sudden you see the ghost of John DeFeo. That's nice. Yeah, many believe this is the ghost of one John DeFeo, one of the boys who lived there prior to that 1974 horrible event. We're still trying to cover this. What do you guys think? Elaborate hoax, or perhaps this photo is one solid piece of evidence that the Amityville house was and still is indeed haunted? Number 9, Svalbard Vault. Over the pandemic, I spent a lot of time playing video games. Chris and I actually just talked about video games for like 8 minutes straight before we click record, so that's pretty funny. Some of my favorite games always have a similar theme. They always have this post-apocalyptic feel. It's always just barren wasteland with like one dog as a survivor and you have to like go and eat scraps. Yeah, Fallout, it's a great game. There's shelters with survivors or even vaults. It's stressful, but it's engaging, right? Searching around. Now in real life, we do have a global seed vault, and it's deep in the Arctic Circle on the island Spitsbergen. Now in this massive bunker that has since been deemed the Doomsday Vault, great name, really rolls off the tongue there. This is where humans will store food crops. It contains 100 million seeds. So if the earth all of a sudden, gets wiped out, or even if all the ice melts and it floods and everything goes to quickly, this vault will still be good to go. All that water that just, flooded the rest of humanity will then regrow the earth with all of these seeds, ideally. It sounds like a fun, cute way to get humans to think about the future. Like, hey, throw some seeds in, make a wish. But I'm concerned. Is there something we don't know? How soon is this gonna happen? Why is everybody involved in this little seed heist? Number 8, Pluto's Gate. Number 8, Pluto's Gate. It rhymes, what's up? Also known as the Gate to Hell. Okay, that's horrifying. These ruins discovered in Turkey back in 1965 are beautiful, but they're also cursed. Historians believe that the site is the ancient city of Hierapolis, and if you're thinking about visiting these eerie ruins, well, you better leave the family pet at home. Yeah, any and all animal that enters these ruins, they also meet instant death. Sparrows were tossed in, and then they immediately stopped breathing and they dropped. This was horrifying locals, so they had to resort to science. Scientists have figured out the solution, and it's still pretty haunting. They measured the CO2 concentration, and it turns out while the sun is up, it burns away the gas, but at night, when the temperature drops significantly, the CO2 becomes heavier than that of air. Then it creates this deadly gas cloud on the floor, and then when the sun rises back up again, the concentration of CO2 hits 35%, so it's deadly enough for animals and sometimes even humans. Yeah, just stay away from anything called the gates of hell. How about that? It's pretty sound advice just to play it safe, fun thing. Number 7, nursing home spirit. Also, we're gonna throw in some ghosts in this list, so again, hope those lights are dimmed. This photo was taken from a nursing home resident the same night another resident had passed away, and they had no idea. This was back in 2015. That night, they heard a door open and close out in the hallway, but no visitors were allowed there at the time, so they noted it. It was, a little odd. So there's a great amount of people who thinks that this image here is one of two things. 1, the spirit of the resident that sadly passed away, or 2, it could be the Grim Reaper. Yeah, how scary is that? Both terrible options. A few comments were saying how it's comforting to know that in the end, you aren't alone and, an entity or something will walk you to the other side. I disagree. I think it's terrifying. I'd rather die alone than have this dude break into my home and then walk me to the afterlife. I don't want any Grim Reaper, thank you. Check out this photo. What do you think? Is this real or is this fake? Comment down below. Number 6, magnificent alien. While the rest of the world was in panic mode, a new sea sponge was discovered in 2020. How fun is that? And by fun, I mean definitely an alien. This is terrifying. It was named Advena magnifica, which translates to magnificent alien. Yep, magnificent alien, they're gonna call it. This sponge literally gets its name because it looks like ET. And to be fair, it does look like ET, it's kinda cute. An ROV found this sample over 6,000 feet deep in the Pacific Ocean. This was never meant to be found, and we did it. They found it in what they call a forest of weird. Just an alien sponge sticking their ET heads out, hoping for some food to pass by. That's literally their entire life. They just sit there and wait in the darkness until some sort of dust just sticks on them, and they go, and they eat it, somehow. Cristiana Castella Branco, the researcher who found this deep sea squishy, explains the discovery in an NOAA interview saying, as all these organisms are intricately connected, by documenting and describing marine biodiversity, we are building a better understanding of life and the impact of humans on Earth, and in this case, in the ocean. End quote. For a guy like me who doesn't like the ocean or any of the creatures in it. That's terrifying. See ya. Number 5. The Shining Hotel Spirit. The Stanley Hotel in Colorado is now, of course, quite famous for its use in the Stanley Kubrick 1980 classic, The Shining. The lodge, being over 100 years old, has a pretty decent chance of being haunted in real life. So the spirit tours that happen there pack a punch for fans of the production and also fans for the paranormal. Jay Mossling was on one of these tours, so like any ghost expert would do, they snapped a few photos of random corners of the room. Gotta catch those ghosts with the flash, it's the only way. After the trip, he was going through said photos and he found this gem. It appears to be a spirit, a demon, a ghost, an apparition, something that's see-through and floating, so scary. It also has long black hair, it appears, so yeah, I don't know what's going on there. The room was of course empty at the time the photo was taken, and I do believe that. There's no way you could just snap random photos of people and be like, oh, I was looking for ghosts, sorry. No, that's illegal, you can't do that. Number 4. Deep sea pigs. All right, we'll bring it back up to some scary sea stuff. These guys are a genus of sea cucumber, but they have these little tube-like legs, which is why they look super weird and scary. Not that regular sea cucumbers look exceptionally normal, these ones look even weirder than that of regular ones, so gotta include them. They like to live on the seafloor, where they move through the sediment searching for their next meal. They eat, check this out, they eat by extracting tiny little particles of organic matter that's just fallen from the surface of the ocean. Yeah, they just wait around for scraps to, again, just land on them. How sad is that? It's kind of funny, but it's mostly sad. Sea pigs measure out to be 4 to 6 inches long. So yeah, I guess they're cute, sure, I guess they're small, so therefore cute. I'll admit it, they're okay to look at. And they live at a depth of somewhere between 1,200 to 5,000 meters deep, so I don't have to worry about any of these sea pigs grabbing my own little piggies, right? They're quite deep, so therefore out of sight, out of mind. They are small, but they're mighty. Their skin carries a natural poison, which can make them a horrible midnight snack for anyone involved. Also, when brought up closer to the surface, they literally disintegrate. So that's a scary fact to know about an animal. Number 3. The Spectre of Newby Church. This one comes from 1963, so it's a little more recent, but even so, this is one of the most convincing on this list, in my humble opinion. Reverend K.F. Lord took this photo in the Newby Church in England. England's a hotspot for ghosts, eh? Damn. And Lord ensures us that this photo is 100% real. I mean, to be fair, it looks like the spirit is facing the camera, so I don't know. It's a great frame, but I'm still believing. The whole plague doctor vibe going on here, that's what makes me feel gross here. Anything with plague doctors is always giving me the creeps, so I can't even look at this photo. The figure seems to be standing on the first step to the altar, yet somehow it is still taller than the actual altar itself. We think this being, this ghost, is about 9 feet tall, so whoever faked this, if that is the case, they must have been on stilts or something. Also, stilts and a sheet over your face on a staircase? I don't know. I don't think anyone faked this. That's for sure a very tall demon. Drink your milk, then you'll be tall and strong in the afterlife, just like that demon right there. Number 2, the Paris Catacombs. As above, so below is an underrated horror film. It's very good. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Makes you all sweaty and not nice. In the movie, a team of explorers accidentally go too deep when exploring the Paris Catacombs, and in turn, they have to face their own hellish nightmare. I'm not going to give anything away. Well, this is not too far-fetched, it seems. In what feels like a never-ending maze, the tunnels underneath Paris stretch for hundreds of miles. See, originally the tunnels were built for Paris stone mines, but near the end of the 18th century, it turned into something a little more haunting. Cemeteries at this point in history were starting to fill up, and I mean that in a literal sense, like bodies. It was gross. We didn't know what to do, right? Humans didn't figure out the cleanliness thing for a while, so bodies would be laying on the side of the road. So the solution here was to use these catacombs, right? These tunnels have been there for centuries, so you might as well put them to good use. And by good use, I mean arguably the scariest basement in the world. Just walls of skulls. What could possibly go wrong? So haunted. Never go in there, so haunted. Do you live in Paris? Have you seen this? Has anyone actually been down there? I want to hear your account. Comment down below, because that's a scary movie, man. That's really not great. And finally, number 1, Chernobyl. One of the greatest nuclear disasters ever in history. On April 26, 1986, reactor number 4 at the Chernobyl power complex exploded due to unstable and low power levels. Reactor 4 had been shut down a day before due to maintenance, and the next day at 1:23 a.m., radioactive debris compiled of fuel and reactor components just rained down all over the building. It's a nightmare scenario. Toxic fumes were carried from the wind, and after just 4 months, 28 workers had died due to radiation exposure. Eventually, they had to evacuate over 100,000 residents, and to this day, that zone is a no-go. Reactor 4 will stay highly radioactive for another 20,000 years, so no time soon. Let's not head back there anytime soon.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is a stratovolcano located in Skamania County, Washington. This volcano is best known for its huge and disastrous eruption on May 18, 1980. This photograph comes from photographer Robert Landsberg, who of course was in the area at the time of the eruption. Before the eruption, he had visited the area in order to photograph and document all of the changes that were happening. On May 18th, he was within a few miles of the volcano when it erupted. Since he unfortunately was located so close to the explosion, he knew he would be unable to escape this disaster, so instead of focusing on the impossible, he focused on taking as many pictures as possible. Robert was obviously incredibly brave and dedicated, but also very smart. After snapping as many photos as he could, including this one, he then secured his camera in his backpack and covered his backpack with his body. He knew he was unlikely to survive, but wanted to make sure that these photos did. His body was found 17 days later with his backpack still underneath him. His film was of course developed and has provided geologists with some really valuable insights with his close documentation of the eruption. In our number 9 spot today, we have the core. This photo shows a physicist named Harold Agnew, and while this looks like a relatively normal, non-threatening photo, what he has in his hand is truly devastating. Harold is holding the nuclear core of what was nicknamed the Fat Man atomic bomb. This means that Harold is holding the nuclear core of the atomic bomb that was later dropped on on Nagasaki in 1945. The immediate blast, of course, took many lives, but so did the long-term effects of the bomb, like radiation illness and that sort of thing. It's crazy to look at a photo like this because it seems just so perfectly normal when he literally has a life-changing, world-ending device in the palm of his hand. Also, I don't think I could ever hold something like that. Not only would I just not want to, but I would just be so afraid that something was gonna go wrong. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Challenger crew. This is a photo that was taken of the clearly very excited Challenger crew as they walked down the ramp ready to head off on their mission. The crew even included 37-year-old Krista McAuliffe, who was a high school social studies teacher. She had won a spot on this mission through a program with NASA called the Teacher in Space program, and she had trained diligently for months in order to be the first non-military person in space. On January 28, 1986, the Challenger mission proved to be fatal just 73 seconds after liftoff. 2 rubber O-rings failed because of the cold temperatures of the morning, and on live television, the world watched as the spacecraft broke apart and plunged into the ocean, sadly taking the lives of everyone on board. It is an absolutely tragic event made even more chilling by this final photo.
Number 7. The Lady of Raynham Hall. This one's a classic. If my grandma was still alive, she would have loved this one. If you haven't seen this photo, it's gonna live rent-free in your head from here on out. This spirit is said to haunt Raynham Hall in Norfolk, England. Nice. My old home. Not Norfolk, but I have English family. What's up? This tale kicked off back in 1936 after a photo went around through Country Life magazine. I guess that's its way of going viral back then, right? This photo shows a spirit, apparently, wearing a brown gown, hence where her name comes from, the Brown Lady of Raynham Hall. Just casually floating down a staircase. That's lovely. Imagine seeing this in real life. I'm sweating doing this list. Legend has it that the ghost is that of Dorothy Townshend. She was the sister of Robert Walpole, the first Prime Minister of Britain back in 1676. Some reports say the image is a result of long exposure, just gone awry, but either way, I don't like looking at this photo, so let's move on. Great. Number 6, the Gates of Guinea. Another bad portal to another bad place. The souls of the dead have to go somewhere, and depending on your beliefs, that somewhere could either be beautiful, it could be peaceful, or it could be absolutely terrifying. Who knows, one of the 3. In the world of voodoo, that place is an underworld called the Gates of Guinea. And here is the front door. Yeah, located in Louisiana, this tomb, that of voodoo priestess Marie Laveau, is apparently the entrance to these deep waters, this twilight realm. And some voodoo followers try and open these gates to access the souls of the deep. And apparently the goal after that point would be to use the dead almost like zombies, like your own little personal zombie army, so that's horrible, I guess. Number 5, backseat driver. This photo here is from 1959, and it certainly looks like it. It was taken by a lady named Mabel Chinnery, and the photo at first glance is just a classic 60s shot of a man in a car. That man was Mabel's husband. Now the man in the back seat, however, we have no idea who that is. Apparently they weren't there in real life. Her husband was the only one in the car at that time. And also, that's a pretty tough angle. If you wanted to recreate this photo with your friends after work, it would be hard. You have to really line something up there. Some Edgar Wright shot has to happen, you know what I mean? It's like he's appearing to us through the seat almost. So either this is a lie, and there was indeed a man sitting in the back left seat, or like Mabel believes, this is her dead mother-in-law. Now, if she had said father-in-law, I'd think maybe it's a spirit, but this for sure looks like an older man with a collar. So we don't know. A lot of ghosts just like to hang around. Honestly, Mabel, just see a priest, just to be safe. Number 4, ghost pilot. Oh, this one gives me the absolute creeps. I'm hoping it's just a friendly ghost, but really, you never know. I never know. I don't know. I don't want anything to do with any ghost, but sometimes they're friendly, apparently. Any sort of spirit, I don't welcome. There, I said it. The ghost pilot is a photograph that shows a spirit from 1987, when a woman named Mrs. Sayer was visiting an airfield in England. So of course she did the tourist thing and she got a photo in the cockpit, as we all do. Especially now after seeing Top Gun, I'd be like, yo, get a photo with me. But while you're sitting in there getting that tourist photo, do you ever think of who may have sat there before? It's kind of creepy, right? People swear the Titanic was a cursed ship and that spirits were responsible for the ship's bad luck. I personally believe it was the iceberg, but I'm open. Next time you want to sit in the pilot's seat, look around for spirits. This image was developed and it appears somebody or something is in the helicopter with Mrs. Sayer. Yeah, nothing like finding out after, eh? Oh.
In our number 3 spot today, we have the lipstick. This is a photo that comes to us from December 10th, 1945. If looking at this image gives you a shudder down your spine, that absolutely makes sense, as it was written by a terrible person known as the Lipstick Killer. This photo is an image of a note he left written on the wall at one of his crime scenes. The photo comes from the apartment of Frances Brown, as just before he wrote this message, he took her life. After this message was left, he ended up taking the life of one other person before he was finally caught by police 6 months later. The message scrawled in the photo reads, quote, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." It is an absolutely chilling note with a horrifying backstory. In our number 2 spot today, we have the acid drum. This photo comes to us from inside the house of another terrible person, the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, made very famous recently. This photo was taken from the inside of his home after he was found out and caught by authorities. Before his arrest, he was sadly able to take the lives of 17 different people. Although this photo might look kind of plain, the horrors are plentiful. This shot shows a drum full of acid that was located inside of his home. Probably don't really need to tell you what it was used for. I can't imagine the horrors investigators saw when they entered his home, and even previous to that as they investigated his crimes. Thankfully, Jeffrey was caught, and in 1992 he was sentenced to life in prison, but just 2 years later he was killed by a fellow prison inmate. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Dyatlov Pass incident. If you have never heard of the Dyatlov Pass incident, you better buckle in because it is so terrifying. This photo was taken in February of 1959 as 9 young Soviet hikers sent out to trek through the Ural Mountains. They had set up a camp, and sometime during the night, something happened that made them cut their way out of the tent and all flee the site. Leaving in such a rush, they were of course underdressed for the bitterly cold weather, and 6 of them ended up passing away from hypothermia, which is extremely tragic. The other 3, however, is where this story takes an even more frightening turn. Like I mentioned before, no one knows why they fled the tent in the first place, and the last 3 hikers were found passed away with severe signs of physical trauma that no one agreed on what had caused it. In 2019, the investigation was reopened, and just last year there was a conclusion that a kind of avalanche called a slab avalanche was the cause for these injuries. Before you come at me in the comments, I know that not everyone is convinced that's what happened, and I don't blame you. It's really strange. So, down below in the comments, let me know what you think. Let's solve this mystery once and for all together in the YouTube comments. Regardless of what happened, this whole incident was of course very tragic, but the mystery behind it definitely takes it to a very spooky place.